So welcome to this crash course in watercolour. So what we're going to do here is we're going to show you exactly what you need to do to paint loose watercolours. So first thing to do is know how to lay a wash down. And what we're going to do is take a brush that's big enough. This is about 8 by 10 inches, this piece of paper, and fill it. And tonal value, we're keeping it nice and light in tone. So it's very watery, not a lot of pigment. And to get this grey colour, I mixed a bit of blue, that's cobalt blue, and a bit of yellow ochre. And notice here, I go over the top a few times. And the reason for that is because the top of the paper dries out first. So this is the game changer for you guys. This bead here. I'm going to go from there to here without getting any lines. And the way I can do that is by keep reloading the brush and making sure that bead stays there. And while the paper is wet like this, you can go over it again. It's not going to cause any problems. It's when it starts to dry out that's the problem. So what we can do, now we're near the bottom, I don't need to reload that brush, and I can let the brush run out, and what it'll actually do is create a little bit of sparkle where the white paper is left behind. Right, don't fiddle with it. Now you've laid it down, make sure you've got no puddles around the edges because that will cause runbacks, and if you have, you could just mop it up. But I've gone from top to bottom and it's a nice graded wash. Now I'm going to take a smaller brush, and you need to know about paint consistency if you want to paint loose watercolours. So what I mean by that is I want to paint the distant trees there. So if I use the same consistency, it would just spread and disappear to nothing. So I've made a slightly thicker mix. So I've just added more paint to water ratio. And the paper's damp, so we're going to get a soft edge. So that's a tree off in the distance there. And one thing to remember with watercolour is that it does dry lighter. So that may look pretty dark at the moment, but when we let it dry, it will get a little bit lighter. Let's have some slightly taller trees there off in the distance. Connection, we want to connect the whole painting up. We want it to look like a scene where it has a wholeness. And what I mean by that is it doesn't look like I've painted a sky, I've painted some trees, and then I painted a foreground. We want it to be all one shape. So again, about the same sort of thickness of paint. That I don't want this to be as light as the sky. And again, use that bead. If you want a nice fluid wash, and don't be afraid of greys. If you want natural, realistic looking paintings, we don't want to be using bright greens and yellows straight from the tube. So, warming it up slightly towards the foreground. And slightly more paint. So I'm increasing the paint to water ratio now. And maybe a bit of hands of yellow as well. We could use cadmium yellow to warm it up. So what that will do, by going slightly darker in the foreground, it'll give it a bit more depth. When to paint on here, that everything is damp on here at the moment. So if I want a tree with a hard edge, it'll soften because the paper's damp. But I think we're still in the realm of soft trees at the moment. So it's okay to continue painting because we want soft edges. And if you're enjoying this, please do hit that like and subscribe and stick around. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with those white little sparkles left on the paper at the end of the video. And please do not worry about the colour. Don't worry about how to get this green I've got here. It doesn't matter. I'm actually going to use a bit of burnt umber there just to desaturate that green. So now I'm actually using much thicker paint because I still want soft edges, but I want this tree to actually stay a tree shape. And if I used paint that's too watery, it would just do what these have done, just disappear to nothing. So by using paint really quite thick there's not a lot of water in there, but I'll still get a soft edge because of the paper's damp. And we can put that hedge in there, look. And you'll notice that we're getting a soft edge, but that line is staying pretty well put. It's softening a little bit, but you know, I want this atmospheric little look to the scene here, so I'm not worried about a little bit of softness there. And we've got another tree here. Maybe we'll have that one slightly smaller, maybe. Okay, we'll have that one slightly smaller. And how much detail do you need to put in a painting? That's fine for a tree off in the distance in the mist. We don't need any more than that. So next, I want some sharp edges. So I'll need to let the paper dry. But before it does dry, just make decisions. Do you need to do anything before it does dry? Because this is your only opportunity for soft edges. So I am thinking another tree here. So I'm actually going to use more blue, which will send it back off into the distance. And I'm going to put a tree here because I want it to balance the scene. But I think we know we've got too many trees over this side, not this side. The painting, if you think about a painting, if it was a balancing scale and you put your centre bit there, you know, does it balance? So I think by having another tree there, and I can just clean my brush off, just take off the moisture, and I can just soften those edges a little bit. So you can play about a little bit, but not too much with watercolour, and it just takes practice to know what you can and can't do. So quite happy with that. So now we can let that dry, and I often use a hairdryer to speed things up. So you can see here, by not fussing, you get all these lovely effects. That's letting watercolour do its own thing. So creating distance, we can now use warmer colours, so less blue in them and perhaps more yellows and oranges to bring the next lot of trees closer. And I'm going back to a bigger brush, and again consistency comes up, that we don't want too watery of a mix because it will just disappear. We want a reasonable amount of paint, so start with that. So again, I'm using this Skoda Ultimo brush. This is a mop brush, and if you push it down like that, it will splay out, and that's perfect for painting these branches here. And mix on the paper. Don't worry about just mixing your colour and then putting it on. That's a bit of cadmium yellow I'm using there, but honestly, do not worry about matching my colours. I couldn't match these colours because it's all so random with watercolour. You know, it's the question that everyone asks me. You know, please give more information about your colours you're using or how you get those mixes. It's impossible. So a bit of red in there. Again, that's going to warm things up a little bit. And a bit more blue. So a little bit darker in here. And this is still painting wet into wet, although, you know, it's a slightly not doing the bead and bringing it down. But I'm still painting wet into wet. That's why I paint quite quickly, and that is what you'll need to learn to do if you want to paint loose watercolours, is learn to paint quickly. It's the only way to do it. So another useful brush to have is this ProArt 9A sword brush, and what that will do will make nice branches. And you don't need a lot of detail with loose watercolours. In actual fact, by putting in too much detail, you will spoil the effect. Leave a little bit to the imagination. That's what you need to do. There we go. So I left a few holes in here, which adds a bit of light to it. We've got some white paper here. So now we need to connect this shape to the foreground. So let's do that. So another little technique which will add a bit of sparkle to your scenes is dry brush. And to do that, you've got to do it fairly quickly. If you've got too much paint on your brush, just dab it on your tissue, just take it off. Always practice on another bit of paper you can. And what we're looking to do is create that sparkle there. I can connect that up to there. So just creating a bit of light here. And don't be afraid to experiment with watercolors. This area is still damp at the moment, so I can modify it. And I'm just going to just dip my brush in water and just put some water on there. And what that's going to do is that's actually going to thin the paint down here and actually lift it off the paper, and we'll get some interesting effects. You see what happens. And again, the only way you'll learn to do that is to practice. And what I'm going to actually do is actually create runbacks, which is what most beginners will say, I'm trying to avoid these horrible runbacks, but they can actually serve a purpose for a bit of detail in the foreground. And if you know how to create them, you probably know how to avoid them as well. So I'm going to just take a thirsty brush, which is just a brush that's dipped into my jar and then dried off, so it's just damp to the touch. And what I can do is I can actually just pull that across there and mop it up, and just mop that up. And another way you can create a little bit of texture in the foreground, if you just take perhaps a little bit of tissue, you could actually just lift a little bit off. But all these little things are best done in moderation. You know, if you start dabbing over all the paper, it becomes very quickly becomes a bit of a mess. So just a little bit. And the other essential tool you need is this spray bottle, atomizer, whatever you want to call it. You can just float a little bit of mist on there and it keeps the paper wet. So let's dry it off and see, do we need to do anything else to it? And the other day we had a go at painting cows, and if you go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter, you get a video on how to do it, or you can also join the membership and you can see the method we came up with. See, this is a very small, this cow, so we don't really need much in the way of detail, but that would suffice as a cow. Not much in the way of a shadow because it's an overcast day, but it does help just to anchor them to the ground by having a little bit of a, and I can just lift a little bit of paint off there. But it's useful to know how to confidently put in animals if you want to paint landscapes. Obviously, if you're a beginner, leave the animals out. If you're not comfortable doing them, it would suffice to just do the scene as a landscape. So where I've got those white bits of paper left there, perfect opportunity to put some cattle. Now, this is a scene from where I live, and there's lots of cows around here. There we go. Again, just no detail. Now, part of being able to paint loose watercolors confidently is knowing how much detail you don't have to put in. Again, no details needed. Let's have lots of birds. A busy spring morning, misty morning. So let's take away the reference picture. It's important to not compare your painting to the reference picture. Just take inspiration from it. And I've not even attempted to match the colors. I've gone for creating atmosphere, and I've paid attention to the tonal values. Fun part, take away the tape, reveal that nice crisp edge. And there we go. That's a crash course in loose watercolours. Sure you can do it. Give it a go. And I look forward to seeing your results on the community forum. So if you enjoyed that, please hit the like and subscribe. Don't forget to go to my website, sign up for my newsletter and get that free video on how to paint a cow. And even better, go one further and join me on a membership and get access to lots of videos. And if you enjoyed this video, you'll probably like this one as well.